Truly, everything that I've learned about our president and his interests are things I've learned entirely against my will. And every new detail has personally disturbed my peace. But then somehow today happened. In the most cursed plot twist imaginable, we wake up to even more unhinged footage, new lies, new drama, and Trump doubling down like the universe handed him a script labeled "Make Everything So Much Worse." Just when the country tried to wash off last week, today rolled in like, hey guys, we actually need you to sit down because we need to talk. And unfortunately for all of us, we do. Because today's clip didn't calm my nerves either. A reporter asked Trump, "Are you feeling okay? Your voice doesn't sound so good." And let's look at how he responded.
Yeah. Mr. President, I have a question about Venezuela, but can I just first ask, the health of the president's always news. Your voice sounds a little rough. Are you feeling all right?
I feel great. I was shouting at people because they were stupid about something having to do with trade in a country, and I straightened it out. But I blew my stack at these people.
Well, it sounds like there's a follow-up there, but can I ask you about Venezuela? You suggested...
Sounds like there what?
It sounds like there's a follow-up there, but can I ask you about Venezuela?
I thought you said there was a polyp. And I said, I don't want to hear that.
Trump, who has never once stopped to think before he speaks, literally just responded to a lighthearted question about his health and his voice by casually saying, "I blew my stack yelling at people." I'm sorry, sir. You what? You're what? This reporter literally just asked, "Are you okay?" And Trump responds by voluntarily talking about blowing his stack. Ew. I mean, for one, it's impressive how he can redirect literally any question ever into an admission of just being an agent of chaos while clearing up absolutely nothing. But moreover, out of all the verbs and all the nouns available in that lethal vocabulary of his, he went on to say, "blew and my stack." After days of people accusing him of giving Bill Clinton or Ghislaine Maxwell's horse a BJ. He went on and he goes on to say that with a straight face this week, of all weeks, an artist in his own way, truly. And speaking of Trump saying things with his whole chest that have no connection to reality, let's move on to the next clip where he claims that an entire foreign prison population was released into the United States and somehow manages to blame Joe Biden for it, of course.
So in the case of Venezuela, it's the prison population. Their almost entire prison population was released into the United States. You know what that means? Their prison population was released into the United States, and we're getting it out. We're doing an amazing job. We have a strong border now. We have everything. Our country's doing so well. But what the Biden administration did to our country should never be forgotten. And the single worst thing they did is allow 20 or 25 million people to pour into our country. People from prisons, drug dealers, mental institutions, bad people, gang members, to allow that to happen to the United States, totally unchecked and unvetted, should never be forgotten.
So that was Trump claiming that the entire foreign governments in Venezuela have released their entire prison populations into the United States, and that Biden allowed this 20 or 25 million dangerous people to enter into our country. These statements are dramatic, but they are not supported by any credible evidence. And actually, they sharply contradict what decades of data actually shows us about immigration and crime in the US. Despite frequent political claims that immigrants bring higher crime, decades of research consistently show the opposite. Multiple large-scale studies, including analysis of Texas's detailed arrest and national incarceration patterns over more than a century, find that immigrants, both documented and undocumented, commit crimes at significantly lower rates than any U.S.-born citizens. Undocumented immigrants in Texas, for instance, are arrested for violent and drug crimes at less than half of the rate of native-born Americans. And for property crimes, it's about 1/4 the rate. Nationally, immigrants are about 60% less likely to be incarcerated. And that increases in the immigrant population over time, which have not led to corresponding increases in crime. So while there's more immigrants coming in, crime amongst them is not going up by any means. In fact, as the proportion of immigrants in the U.S. doubled from 1980 to 2022, overall crime rates fell substantially. contradicting the idea that immigration drives up criminality. Yet, the narrative that immigrants are criminals persists in our political rhetoric every day because it is emotionally potent and it is politically useful, highlighting rare, high-profile crimes committed by immigrants rather than the overwhelming statistical reality allows political leaders to create fear and justify harsher enforcement and rally voters who feel cultural or economic anxiety around this false narrative. This framing also distracts from the fact that many immigrant enforcement actions target people who have no criminal record at all, as recent detention data shows us. By selectively focusing on extreme cases and ignoring broad empirical evidence, political actors can portray immigrants as threats, even though, again, the data overwhelmingly shows that immigrants contribute to safer, more stable communities, but they would rather talk about the falsehood of fake increases in crime. But misinformation isn't just limited to Trump and whatever his thought of the day is. If you want another example of a politician thriving on drama instead of any reality, look no further. Ted Cruz opened up his mouth today, and somehow he's now teasing a 2028 presidential run.
You might be making some news. Axios led its morning newsletter with this headline: Scoop, Cruz eyes 2028 run. Senator Cruz, where are you on that?
You know, reporters are going to write headlines that get clicks and get eyeballs. I got a job. It's representing 31 million Texans, and it's fighting every day for 31 million Texans. And I'll tell you right now, the wins we are getting are historic. The one big beautiful bill you were talking about just a minute ago, I was blessed to write major portions of that bill.
Okay. Watching Ted Cruz flirt with a 2028 presidential run, it feels like watching a drunk man confidently walk back into an establishment where they were just asked to leave. In his latest stunt, Cruz leans hard into his feud with Tucker Carlson, which is painful because it means we probably have to hear more from both him and Tucker Carlson, my least two favorite people on the planet. And watching them claw at each other like the two biggest assholes in American politics. And it's a lot coming from Cruz, who is, if anyone needs a refresher, the man behind the Cancun situation, the senator who fled his freezing state during a deadly storm, lied about it, blamed his daughters, and then got caught on a returning flight, somehow manifests, and then did the standard performance of, oh, I'm helping people. Look at me with these water bottles. This is the same Ted Cruz who publicly forgave Donald Trump after Trump insulted Cruz's wife, her appearance, and suggested his father was linked to JFK's assassination. Something most people would consider disqualifying on dignity grounds alone. It's also the same Ted Cruz who spent years being mocked online as the Zodiac Killer because the internet collectively decided he was awkward and awful enough to fit the joke. And instead of brushing it off gracefully, he clumsily engaged with it and made it even weirder. Cruz has also built a reputation for jumping from one attention-grabbing moment to the next, ranting on his podcast, pretending to be a hardline foreign policy expert whenever convenient, and generally shifting his positions whenever it benefits him politically. So the idea that this is the guy gearing up for a 2028 presidential run by picking a fight with Tucker Carlson is just weird. It's just Ted Cruz doing what Ted Cruz always does, cruising for a bruising, creating drama, hoping it counts as momentum, and somebody mistakes it for credibility. Also, Ted Cruz is the literal worst. Even joking about a 2028 presidential run is too much for this country to process right now in the middle of the Trump Epstein saga. But don't worry, the universe is not done with us yet, because then Dave Portnoy has entered the chat.
And I think a lot of people are wondering, how did we get to this point in America, and how do we get back to a place of civility? Because this is crazy.
Yeah, so I was doing a pizza review in Mississippi, and a kid came up, F the Jews, threw a bunch of coins at me. So that just happened the other day, recently. You know, I've given it a lot of thought, and I think there's a variety of factors how we've gotten here. people aren't putting their foot down. It starts at colleges. People are getting away with basically threatening and intimidation and hate speech, and is for somehow being I don't know if protected is the word, but it's not being condemned the way it should. It's basically was allowed on college campuses and throughout. And then the internet is a cesspool. Like, social media has allowed what I would think faceless names who in the past, live in a corner of their own lives and they're not normal people, have all kind of, I guess, been able to express themselves online. And there's a couple hate people out there, a couple sites. They all kind of follow these people, and it's a place for them to meet, and it grows and grows online. I didn't want apologies. I want outrage that this is happening. But, I get it every single day on whether it's X or Instagram or whatever, DMs. You know what all these people have in common? They cover their face. They're not real people. And it's hard not to pay attention to it, but this new social media, really plays a huge factor in, they can kind of validate themselves. Like in the past, where did these people go? You didn't do out in public. They had nobody to talk to, but it's almost like they're forming these little groups online, and it's an echo chamber where they think it's okay.
Okay, look, Dave Portnoy and we don't have a lot of things that we agree on, but I'll start here. Because it's important. Anti-Semitism or hatred towards Jewish people or hatred toward anyone on the basis of their identity, religion, or how they move through this world is unacceptable. On that point, Dave and I are in full alignment. Everyone deserves to feel safe expressing who they are. Everyone deserves to live without fear of being targeted for their identity. But here's where I have a real issue, Dave. It's hard to take you seriously when you suddenly become a beacon or a defender of against harm and hate only in the moments when you are the one being harmed. Speaking out only when you're the victim is not some sort of righteous leadership. This is just your self-interest here, Dave, and it's completely ignoring the culture you've created. You've spent years shaping Barstool because, let's be honest, Barstool didn't just appear in a vacuum. You created a brand that thrived on cruelty, mockery, punching down, and manufacturing outrage for clicks. And that culture doesn't just disappear when you decide you've personally been fed up with other people's hate. You've built a platform where misogyny, harassment, and demeaning content have become core features. There's a long public record of Barstool segments and personal comments from Dave himself where he has been widely criticized as a sexist, degrading women, dismissive of consent, and hostile towards people who speak out. Multiple people have publicly accused you, Dave, of harmful behavior, of claims you've denied. But the broader pattern of misogynistic content you've produced and defended is well documented. So when you go on Fox demanding more consequences for hate speech, it feels a little hollow. When you're suddenly worried about harm and accountability, are you sure you're the same person who's built an entire empire and egging people on gambling addiction memes, on culture war rage bait, and a fan base that's been encouraged to treat women like shit and as part of entertainment? It's not that you're wrong to call out anti-Semitism. Like I said, we're aligned there. It's that you've never shown the same energy when the hate was directed at women, at queer folks, at Black or brown people, or at anyone you saw as an easy punchline. And that's the problem. I want everyone to come to the table when they realize that hate is wrong, truly. But it's a shame you didn't care about the harm your content was causing until you were the one feeling targeted. Growth is good. Accountability is great and it's necessary, but it only works when it's not so selective. If you're serious about opposing hate, then acknowledge the role your own platform has played in normalizing it. That's the part I think you're missing, Dave, because people who point out concerns about Dave Portnoy or about Barstool in general, they're not imagining these patterns. There's a public record behind this criticism, and understanding it helps explain why so many people reacted when he recently spoke out about hate speech. And since Dave Portnoy suddenly wants to talk about harm and hate, we need to lay out some very real examples because people keep bringing these up because they aren't rumors. And they're out in the public records. Let's start with Sam Ponder, because that situation really set the tone. Years ago, Barstool published a blog full of vulgar, sexually derogatory comments about the ESPN reporter. When she pushed back, Barstool leadership and their supporters mocked her. And the harassment that went on for a very long time. That moment didn't happen in isolation. It became one of the clearest examples that people point to when they talk about how Barstool treats women who speak up. And once you remember that, the rest of the pattern gets a lot easier to remember and to see. Portnoy has a long trail of comments about women and consent. Clips and blog posts where he jokes about sexual violence or treats it like a punchline. Survivor groups have been calling out his bullshit for years because those kinds of jokes don't just disappear. They teach an audience what to take seriously and what to shrug off. Then there's the union incident, which shows this isn't just about gender. Portnoy puts out a video saying he'd fire any Barstool employee who even talked about unionizing. The National Labor Relations Board stepped in and said, hey, yeah, that's illegal. And again, this wasn't a rumor or a misunderstanding. He recorded himself saying it. And you can see the same pattern if you remember an athlete named Colin Kaepernick and that whole situation around Black Lives Matter. During Kaepernick's kneeling protests, Portnoy compared Kaepernick's beard to a terrorist and said he looked like he was auditioning for an ISIS video. People called it out immediately because it played straight into racist stereotypes at a time when tensions in this country were already running high. And those are just a few examples. There's a whole playbook of patterns behind this. You can just Google it yourself. One that survivor groups, student organizations, and countless critics have been calling out for years, that Dave has always passed off as entertainment. So when Dave goes on Fox News demanding consequences for hate speech, people have questions, Dave, not because he's wrong to call out anti-Semitism. He's right there, but the culture he has built has fed a lot into the same attitudes he now says he's against. And listen, nothing he's done in the past justifies anti-Semitism or hate he's dealt with, but it does mean that if he really wants to stop and take a real stand now, he might want to consider acknowledging the role he's played and his own platform has played in normalizing this kind of stuff. This could actually be a turning point for him. And if he wants it to be, great. But that starts with honesty about the influence he's had, the audience he's shaped, and the harm he's been willing to ignore until it landed on his own doorstep. Same goes with Marjorie Taylor Greene, for what it's worth, because speaking out against hate matters. But so does recognizing when you've helped create the environment where that hate thrives. And if this video has helped expand your perspective, please take a moment to subscribe, share this video with a friend.